just getting into it. And I think the most important thing is to have a sound philosophical basis. Because when you say astrology, if you look on the internet, it kind of is all sounds like it's the same thing. But the more you learn and the closer you look, it's like everyone's
A
saying
lot.
kind of the same thing, but it's different, you know? Because astrology is a system, and we're going to talk about this. It's a system, astro, stars, ology, logos, or the study of, so the study of the stars, all right? And a lot of people can go outside and study the stars, but what they make of their study of the stars is going to be different. It's going to be different for different cultures. And now that more individuals are learning this, the idea and the beauty of astrology is it's supposed to be unique to each individual. Well, I like to start at the history of astrology, at least as far as I understand it, as far as I understand it. So the first people that we could call astrologers that we have note of, record of, was in Mesopotamia, and they were priest scribes. And what I mean by priest scribes is they were priests in the sense of they were mediators between the gods, right, up in the sky, and what was going on in earthly affairs, right? And mediators because they were the ones that had the knowledge of how to measure or how to recognize where the planets were. And so there's hundreds of years of notes of these priest scribes writing down where the planets were in the sky and what was going on in human affairs. You know? Right. Because astrology, the study of the stars, at least the way I see it, is really about it came from this urge to find the influence of the gods on human affairs. Okay? The influence of the gods, the celestial objects on human affairs. And you know, I'm going to use a lot of religious terminology because my understanding is the beginning of astrology, it was a religion. So the names that are passed down in this tradition of astrology are the names of the planets are named after Roman gods. So we have Mars, the god of war, Venus, the god of beauty, art, and music, Saturn, the god of time, Roman gods. But before in the tradition, before they are Roman gods, they were named after the Greek gods. So it wasn't Jupiter, it was Zeus. It wasn't Mercury, it was Hermes. And before they were named after the Greek gods, they were named after the Mesopotamian gods. So it wasn't Jupiter or Zeus, it was Marduk, right? So in the Mesopotamians, they're the ones that give us the clay tablets, the recorded history, first recorded history. So the first recorded history we have of gods, they're up in the heavens, you know? And even today, when we talk about religion and we talk about God, people look up to the heavens. People look up to the heavens. And it's just that when the Roman gods, right, the next major religion in the world was Christianity. And Christianity only had one God. And so the naming convention kind of fell apart, right? Maybe they could have named them after saints. I'm sure there's some system out there where the planets were named after saints. Okay. All right. But the idea is trying to appreciate the influence of the gods on human affairs. All right. All right. Any questions? Perfect. So here's where it gets kind of sticky, right? And I would love this to be a conversation, right? It gets kind of sticky because I'm purposely using religious terminology, but I kind of have to because that's where it comes from. So we have to think of when they called them gods, and when we say God or gods, what are we actually talking about? You know, and to me, that's a discussion because if we can, and I don't think there's necessarily a right answer, but if we can wrestle with that idea, that taps us right into what astrology is and what it's not. So let's take Mars as the god of war, okay? And as a reminder, going back to the beginning of how astrology came, is noting what's going on in the sky and what's going on right in human affairs, okay? And so I'm making this up okay, I imagine they recognized whenever Mars was at a certain place, okay, there seemed to be wars, fights, you know? And after taking notes for a certain amount of time, they recognized when that planet, right, when that star, right, that moving object is around that area, right? We have it on paper, right? Wars break out, right? So this idea of some force up there, okay, causing or influencing things going on down here. Okay? And again, we're in a more of an ancient mindset, right? If we get in a time machine and we fast forward to this day and age, it's a different mindset. So we don't, it's almost a bad word to say God. It's treading light in most of the world, okay, or most of America. So I think of this day and age, we live in a more psychological time, and so it's hard to think of them as gods. To me, it's easier to think of them as psychological drives or urges, right? Because it's something that that affects us, and it feels like it's coming out of anywhere, right? It's like, I think that, right, in the mythology, right, Venus's son, Aphrodite's son, was Cupid, right? And when Cupid shot you, you couldn't help but fall in love, and oftentimes it got you in trouble, right? And hopefully all of us have a story like that, you know? And if we go back and look at our chart when this occurred, right, we are going to see Venus activations, yeah, right? And in the moment, right, we're in love, okay? But when we look back, we might say, what came over me? Or maybe it's easier, safer to see it happening to our friends, yeah, right? Or I think of Mercury, the messenger of the gods, information exchange, okay? Right? Have we been in the situation where we couldn't keep our mouths shut, or right, we were around someone else who couldn't keep their mouth shut, or right, that times where we wish we would have said something and we didn't, right? And we're going to see if there's major events in our life based off what we said too much, not saying enough, saying the right thing. We're going to see Mercury activations. Because to me, I don't even want to jump into a natal chart until we understand a philosophical groundwork. Because to me, if you have a sound philosophical grounding, it's when you start doing the technical stuff, it just makes sense. Things just start to click. But I find it difficult when people start with the astrology and then they have to go back to understand what it is. It doesn't make sense, but it's what happens to everyone. Because there's people don't get grounded in like what we're doing. Because to me, astrology cannot give us any information, cannot invent information to give us. It can just help us see more clearly, but it's still our vision. So I want to like have this, like, first connect to this idea of what I mean when I say see clearly. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Like when you ask to, like, when we're talking about the planets as gods, and when we bring up that word, like even coming to an idea of what are we talking about, not so that we can agree, but just so that we can be on the same page as to what we're talking about. Like my mind goes to like what we're all made of, right? God or a creator. So it's like it's what made all of us, or what we're all made of or made from, or what we're a reflection of. But it's that one thing uniquely that's inherently the same between all of us. And right, we all have the planets, we're all made of the same
What you're
stuff.
saying, I understand what you're saying, but I think we can still keep talking about the idea of what do I mean when I say gods. I was talking to Blaze a couple of weeks ago, and this phrase kept coming out of my mouth. And the phrase was blame it on the gods, right? Blame it on the gods, blame it on the gods, right? And another phrase came out, right? The gods gotta eat. God's got to eat. Okay, so what no, going back to the example of falling in love, right? Falling in love, right? A Venus time, right? If Venus is active, okay, there's something deep inside of us that needs to feel connected to someone or something. And it's going, right, and that it's a need, it's a desire, it's something that we can wake up and we can try to push it down. Uh, I had Solange in my head. You, anyways, but when that feeling hits you, right? It's you can try to push it down, right? But there's it's going to be constantly bugging you, and if you try to ignore it, it attracts experiences to you. So in a Venus time, this is why we say gods, because it's it's inexplicable. It's hard to put into words, but we can experience, we can sense it, we can feel it, but we can't see it, right? You can't see Venus, right? But when you see something that I say Venus, when you see something that gives you the warm and fuzzies, you know? And I think of when the ancients talked about gods, what they meant was they see something beautiful, right? Beautiful, right? And they say that's Venus, right? Kind of what Brian was saying. Where does beauty come from? Where does beauty come from, right? Ancients would say, oh, that's easy. Venus, Venus. Yes, we are, when we are experiencing the planets, we are experiencing the gods. So if someone does something to you and you can feel like anger coming up in you, okay, that's an experience, that you're experiencing Mars. Okay, but now we can get into like a real life example. All right, so you say a male who, right, a male who grew up and let's say his dad was a football coach. Okay, so very Mars, push, go, 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 right? So this kid grew up in an environment where Mars was given free expression. It was kind of in one direction, but it was given free expression, right? And you compare that to a woman, a female who grew up in a house of poets who were anti-gun, you know, anti-violent, they're peace protesters, okay, right? And the kid grows up, but the kid has strong Mars in their chart. Okay, so in both examples, the individual is experiencing the god Mars, but it's experienced through their conditioning. Yeah, and so like if we think of the idea of we are all gods incarnate, this is kind of what they're talking about. Is inside of is this raw potential of Mars, right? But it's happening through our animal experiences. And that I think as we go through life and the experiences we have help us to raise the vibration of how the gods are expressing through us. You know, and the beauty of this system is we can get a sense of what the higher frequency expressions are, and we can get a sense of what the lower frequency expressions are. You know, it's like, right, it's kind of obvious when you think about it like this, okay? Right, you see a little kid in the playing in the playground, right? And one kid comes over and pushes the other kid, right? Right, that, and the kid gets up and smacks the other one, okay? Right, we could argue, right, that's a lower expression, right? And the parents come over and they handle it, okay? And we imagine, right, the kid doesn't change, okay? And they're 25, someone accidentally steps on their toe, right? Right? And they punch them and they get into a fight. We can see, right? It's not a high vibration frequency of it, okay? Right? But someone goes through those experiences and they learn, right, how to control their temper and to be more constructive with it, right? That energy that was used to punch someone out can be used to build stuff. It can be used in other more productive ways, right? And so this idea of gods, right? It's that blame it on the gods is appreciating that everything that we attract and everything that rises up in us, right, that we can't explain, right, we can think of it's coming from the gods. So back to the original astrologers, right, people living life and realizing life is chaotic, and they keep looking to the stars and they realize there is order up there, right? There's order up there, there's chaos down here. If we can align to that order up there, maybe we can have more order down here.